I'm Edward Warfield, the publisher of City Biz, and I'm honored today to interview Terrence McCrossan, who is the CEO of Oversight. Welcome, Terrence.
Thank you, Edwin. Looking forward to our conversation.
Oversight describes itself as the industry's leading AI platform for spend monitoring and control. What distinguishes Oversight's approach from more traditional rule-based or human-centric audit tools?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So maybe a good starting point is to describe what traditional tools still look like in most finance organizations. And surprisingly, even in large enterprises, those traditional tools are still manual processes. So it's typically audit teams doing manual sample set audits of data sets, looking for transactional risk in their corporate spend. So our mission in life is to automate that process with an AI-driven approach that delivers a significantly higher level of accuracy, a significantly greater level of efficiency, while giving CFO organizations a much better feel for what the spend risk actually is within their business. So we do that with, as I mentioned, an AI-driven approach. So we apply, a fairly comprehensive AI technology stack to the process, everything from expert system to deep learning, certainly leveraging great deals of machine learning, more contextual analysis through large language models, and certainly an emerging part of our portfolio is agentic use cases that allow us to automate aspects of the process as well. And that ability to apply that at multiple phases of the payment process or disbursement process is what distinguishes Oversight and has led to our market success.
Great. So, in your view, what is the single biggest barrier for organizations in adopting AI-based spend monitoring, and how does Oversight help? How do you overcome those barriers?
Yeah, for sure. I might have answered this question a little bit differently 18 months ago, Edwin. So if I dialed back the clock 18 months, probably the biggest impediment was just a willingness to change in most finance organizations. And if you think about the finance practice, especially in a large enterprise, it's a very process-driven, very control-driven administrative effort. So changes, especially technology changes that are thrust into those, can be quite disruptive. So I'd say up until about 18 months ago, that would be the biggest impediment. In our experience, that conversation in the marketplace has changed enormously over the last 12 to 18 months. Right now, the appetite for change in finance organizations is actually extremely high. In fact, many CFOs are carrying a mandate now to leverage AI or at least automation technology to transform how their organization works, right? And much of that is a challenge around their ability to get more efficient with resources, their ability to leverage technology in a much more disruptive way, and all rooted in a desire to drive better controls around how they disperse corporate dollars. Certainly the national political conversation around fraud, waste, and abuse has transformed how a lot of CFOs think about their own control processes, and what we do from an AI perspective has become central to that conversation.
And so, from your vantage point, what are the most significant spend risk themes facing enterprises today?
Yeah, I would stay on the fraud, waste, and abuse conversation topic. There's a few things going on that I think most CFOs are trying to be quite cognizant about when they think about their risk overall, whether it's to cash leakage, whether it's to performance, their control process as a compliance measure. The themes we see really playing out, cash usage and preservation is definitely a central focus area for CFOs. Whether that's strictly a concern around fraud or cash loss, it's certainly a mandate to be much more diligent around where corporate dollars are going, and to have a much better alignment toward prioritized spend within organizations versus discretionary. So we see that as a pretty big theme for enterprises today. There's certainly a theme around the growing sophistication of fraud as well, whether that be fake AI-generated receipts that employees are now able to submit as a method of getting compensated for supposed expenses, whether it's things like business email compromise that are becoming a big risk factor in accounts payable programs or P2P programs that have high level of exposure, that a lot of our clients have had unfortunate experiences with. So that's certainly a big theme. And then the last one I would say is a big theme as well, just from a risk standpoint. If we look at the economic conditions across much of the world today, personal debt is at all-time highs. We see a lot of pressure from a wage standpoint on employees. So when you typically combine those things with having access to corporate cards or corporate expense accounts, it tends to be a marketplace or a condition where more and more employees do more and more risky things with the corporate dollar. So we see a lot of CFOs, really looking to be on top of, again, where their corporate dollars are flowing, and mitigating those risk factors that they see is prevalent in the environment today.
So, what role do people play in your platform, and how do you balance the automation with sort of human judgment to avoid sort of over reliance on AI?
Yeah, very topical as well for a lot of our clients, and it doesn't take too much of a scan of the news reels today to see headlines of organizations announcing large-scale layoffs because they're going to displace people with AI. I would say from an oversight perspective, we view the human in the loop as a critical component of executing an effective financial audit process. Right? We view audit as being fraught with areas of gray that technology is not yet well positioned to either discern or make decisions about. So we view the auditor as critical to the process. But what we also view as critical to the process is ensuring that those auditors are focused on the highest value activities for their organization. So we do look to automate using AI certain types of repetitive tasks, certain types of low value discovery or investigations, all to the effect of making sure that where we do point the auditor's eye, it's towards something that we are confident is an issue that's worth investigating, and that best leverages the human's ability to do that investigative work. So we're looking to strike the right balance between where technology plays and where the human, if you will, plays. And our goal is to make sure that we're empowering audit organizations and driving efficiency, not specifically to displace them in a way that might put the audit process at risk.
So, as AI becomes more prevalent in finance and internal audit, what are some of the biggest regulatory or government risks you see, and how is oversight getting ahead of them?
Yeah, this is a piece of the business that I think a lot of enterprises are just learning about and feeling their way through. But I would say we're seeing three things being fairly common across the large enterprise global landscape. One is a concern with privacy, and that is very simply a concern around what information is involved in AI analysis. Is there personally identifiable information that's included? Is it in compliance with regulatory statutes like GDPR? And other emerging ones that will inevitably probably govern AI usage as we project forward. So privacy certainly being the first and foremost challenge we see or concern we see. The second is around transparency. So when we think about human audits or humans doing activities, the easy thing with a human is to go ask them why they made a decision that they made. AI tools are going to have that same level of transparency so that the end users have a good viewpoint into why a certain decision was made. So that transparency is really key. Then the third thing that we see organizations really asking about is the consistency of AI-driven outcomes. Model drift, if you will. If they look at one transaction today, will the AI effectively make the same decision tomorrow off of the same set of data or criteria? So that ability to manage and explain how the models work, how they drive consistency, is a pretty big concern for organizations that oversight is staying in front of. And frankly, the way that we do it is we try to minimize, from a privacy standpoint, minimize the amount of PII that we work with, so that we're using anonymized data sets to do most of our work. So it minimizes the concern around GDPR and other areas. Certainly from a transparency standpoint, we're providing more and more disclosure around exactly how our AI works, so that organizations can be comfortable with how the models are created, how they learn, and ultimately how they make decisions. And then in terms of model drift, what we are doing from our side is making sure that we are continually validating and updating our models with new information so that they maintain a high level of consistency and a high level of credibility as our client organizations work through the things that we find or point out as part of our audit findings.
So competition is increasing in the spend monitoring fraud detection space. How is oversight? How are you guys differentiating yourselves, and what keeps you confident you're going to stay ahead of the competition?
Yeah, fast-moving market environment. So it's keeping us software providers very much on our toes, Edwin, in terms of how we continue to answer this question. I'll say qualitatively, we're focused on three particular things that we think differentiate Oversight in the marketplace. First and foremost, the core promise of the product is: can you find risk? Can you identify anomalous transactions, anomalous behavior in corporate spend that wouldn't ordinarily be visible with the human eye? So, our first promise that we try to deliver on is being better at finding risk than anyone else in the marketplace. And certainly that is an outcome of the comprehensive AI approach that we take. It's also an outcome of the significant domain expertise that we carry in the finance and audit space. So combining those two is certainly a big part of how we try to differentiate. The second thing that we try to do to differentiate is be incredibly effective at removing noise for audit teams. So, the inevitable offshoot of AI technology is a constant battle of true positive versus false positive balances. So one of the things that we are very focused on through our machine learning models is really trying to minimize the false positive nature of our findings and our conclusions in a way that allows a client organization to be extremely trusting of the true positive things that we point out. So, that ability to remove noise, if you will, from the auditor queue is a big part of our differentiation. And then the third piece that we're extremely focused on is being really effective at helping to automate outcomes or automate resolution. And much of that is ensuring that not only our findings are accurate, but that we have an effective workflow methodology that we can give to auditors to actually conduct and execute their process, whether that's elements of resolution, whether it's elements of communication to employees or vendors, or other areas of the audit process that again, would benefit from machines doing things as opposed to the human effectively doing kind of low value work. So those three things are where we're focused: better at finding risk, better at removing noise, better at automating resolution, and the outcomes that we see ourselves creating for clients in that nature is really what differentiates us in the marketplace.
So, what key product features or ecosystem integrations are you focused on for the next 12 to 18 months?
Yeah, product development and continual delivery of innovative features is certainly a big focus for us. So, we're focused in a few different areas. So, we're continuing to enrich our AI capabilities using contextual analysis. So, again, the use of large language models and other things that are now becoming available and readily accessible to us in terms of higher probability outcomes, more detailed outcomes for our clients is a big focus. Certainly, we'll be investing in agentic AI approaches and use cases that allow us to continue to automate aspects of the audit process in a way that helps drive efficiency and allows teams to do more with less as they struggle with constrained labor pools. And then certainly what we're focused on as well is just driving team productivity. So some of that, again, is just automation of workflow. Some of that is better user experience. And other tools and methodologies that we're bringing to life through the product. So very, very much focused on a continued evolution of the AI capability to drive kind of the three things that I said make us different: identifying risk more effectively, removing noise more effectively, and automating resolution more effectively for audit teams.
So, what's your vision for where AI driven spend risk monitoring is evolving over the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, maybe I'll go back to one of the first or second questions you asked me, Edwin, in terms of what's changed in the landscape. And I'd say the thing that we certainly see going forward is these types of solutions that help organizations really control cash leakage in their business, keep them compliant, and really ensure a high level of transparency and effectiveness in their audit process. They're quickly moving from nice to have components to must-have components for CFOs globally. The risk landscape is too sophisticated. The compliance and regulatory landscape is becoming much more restrictive and punitive, quite frankly, from an outcomes standpoint. That the sorts of tools that Oversight provides are going to be essential for helping organizations really stay ahead of those learning curves. So I think that'll be the biggest thing over the next 3 to 5 years is you'll hopefully be sparsely seeing manual processes for audit, seeing more sophisticated automated tools like Oversight being critical to the CFO's tech stack.
And so, what leadership lessons have you learned running a company at the intersections of payments, fintech, and AI that you believe will matter most in the next phase of your growth?
Yeah, for oversight, I'll say I've had the great fortune to work for some great leaders over the course of my career, and not only those personal experiences, but I'll kind of think back or recollect. Had an opportunity to hear Colin Powell speak a number of years ago and his leadership lessons. And one of the things he really advocated for all leaders is make sure you stay in touch with the front lines. It's where the action is. It's where you really get to understand where the rubber meets the road, or where outcomes really match up with intent. The leadership lesson that I've certainly learned is making sure I'm staying close to the front lines. Quite honestly, Edwin, and the front line for us is at the client site. So I try to do as many client visits as I possibly can. But importantly, it's the folks in our business that are closest to the action. So I spend as much time as I can as well, just making sure I understand, the challenges, the struggles, the opportunities, the joys and the pains of what occurs at all levels of our organization. And I think from a leadership standpoint, that helps me to stay in tune with the business and its rhythm, helps to communicate a vision to our folks in terms of where we're trying to go, and hopefully provides a level of support and encouragement and cheerleading all the way through the organization. That's important.
So, as an early AI adapter, what is your call to action for organizations that haven't yet invested in AI driven spend monitoring, and why start now?
Yeah, I think the call to action is get off the sidelines before it forces you off the sidelines. There's a lot of great emerging technology on the scene that is making it easier and easier for CFOs to be confident that AI is an adaptable approach. And the way I like to describe oversight, especially for organizations that haven't yet made the jump, is we are a very low risk, high outcome starting point for organizations looking to get on the AI journey. We're auditing a very discreet process. We have very mature technology with a significantly large client roster of proof points for success. So my encouragement is, don't wait for the bus to pass you by. Again, the need for organizations to be on top of regulatory and compliance aspects, to be ahead of the risk landscape, but importantly, to be responsive to the needs of shareholders of delivering value with fewer and fewer resources. We're right up the alley of where CFOs should be investing.
And so, is there any part of the oversight story or your own personal story that you haven't shared with us that you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, the thing I'd love to point out about oversight, Edwin, it's we're a 20-year-old business, and I'm always enormously impressed by the willingness of our employees to adapt and change to market environments and changes. Over the course of 20 years as a technology company, even with our early roots in AI, our business has had to pivot a number of times to adapt to new capabilities, new market challenges, new client requests. And I'm always enormously impressed and thankful that we've got a body of teammates here at Oversight that are willing to put in the work, willing to stress over the detail to make what we do for oversight something that's extremely beneficial for our clients as well. So that would be the thing I always look to point out about oversight is we're a combination of a very unique, dedicated group of employees that I couldn't be happier to be working with.
Well, Terrence, I want to thank you for sharing your story and your vision, and keep us surprised as you move forward. And when you get that government contract to audit the United States, tell us about that, okay?
That will be probably a longer session next time, Edwin. So looking forward to it.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Terrence.
Thank you.